From the STEM Global Action Studios in New Orleans, this is the Let's Talk STEM with SGA's Dr. Calvin Mackie podcast. STEM Global Action is a national leader in creating STEM-based learning activities and delivering them virtually and in communities around the globe to students grades K through 12. Here's today's moderator, Ken Sane.
Today we're talking to a couple who founded and are still running a great software company, Vernier Software Technology, Christine and Dave Vernier. But before we get into that, let's introduce our host, Dr. Calvin Mackie. Hello, Dr. Mackie.
Hello, Ken. Thank you for being here once again. Ken, I don't get excited as excited as I am today to have Christine and Dave Vernier on our show. You know, I remember being a student and working with their technology. Over the last 40 years, they've put technologies in the hands of teachers to more effectively teach our students science and bring science to life. So, I mean, this is why I am who I am, and this is why we do what we do, to bring people like this to our audience. So let's get going.
David, Christine, thank you so much for joining us today. So to kick us off, tell us about yourselves, your STEM journey with Vernier Software and Technology, and some of the unique aspects of your software.
Okay, well, I'll take this one. So our story really begins 40 years ago. David was teaching physics at a local high school, and I was working at a law office, managing a law office downtown. And one summer I was working and he was off for the summer, and he felt guilty because he wasn't working. And so he decided to kind of spiff up some of the programs that he had written for his physics classes. They were Apple II programs, they were simulation programs, things that were difficult to explain to students, like satellites, orbiting satellites and projectile motion, that sort of thing. So he put a little $35 ad into a physics journal, and lo and behold, people started buying them. And these were not expensive programs. They were $18 each for a school site license, and there were 6 of them. So we thought this will be a nice little part-time job for him. And so we started selling some of the programs, and gradually we realized that we're not going to make money on these at $18 each. And so David got into writing some programs that involved hands-on science, so equipment to use in labs for experiments like photo gates, measuring moving objects, and temperature probes and things like that. And we started with just selling parts kits. And then people said, well, I don't want to build these things. And so we said, okay, I guess we'll build them in our garage and sell them. And that's how basically the company got started. We, after a little year or so, I quit my job because somebody had to be there to answer the phone. And this was pre-internet, and we didn't even have a fax machine. And so I would be at home taking orders and such. And a year later, David took a leave from his teaching, and we both were working at the company, gradually added people, first kids to help write software, and then an engineer to help us design hardware, and some former teachers to help us write curriculum and come up with ideas on what to make. And the rest is history. We just grew gradually over 40 years. Now we have about 110 employees. We sell all over the world, 150 countries. Russia is or was our biggest customer internationally.
Not biggest.
Internationally.
Maybe.
Yeah.
China might beat them.
Yeah, you might be right. And so we're pretty proud of this company. We've been on the best places to work list in Oregon over 20 times. And we never planned to have a company. We are not business people. We never took a business class, but somehow it's worked out.
Well, Christine, you say you never took a business class. That's probably the secret to your success.
So how is your technology used in the classroom?
Well, we always, when I was a teacher, I was a total believer in labs and demonstrations and getting the kids involved. And so that's really, the whole company is about that. I actually started teaching in an inner city school in Cleveland, Ohio. And, I realized very quickly that lectures didn't work for most of the kids. They worked for me, as I was a pretty into science kid, and they worked for kids that were totally into science and really good students, maybe. But your average student is not. It's just turned off by a teacher standing there lecturing for 45 minutes. So I realized right away we got to get kids involved. And that's the whole company is about that, and doing labs and maybe some demonstrations and doing projects. I'm a total believer in doing projects. You challenge the kids to design something or like that. And you learn things you never even were thought it seems like it has nothing to do with it, but just the act of building something or making something, you learn things. So we're all about hands-on education.
So tell me that time you say you started in the garage, but bring me back to that day when you realized you had something, right? I mean, you're programming, you're making little instruments and people buying it, but when was that day when you said, this may be real?
Well, it probably was gradual, but like Christine said, we certainly were not a .com, and there's never been a time when we went, boom, the graph off the chart. So it's been a more gradual thing. I would say that probably the biggest spurt I guess we knew probably when she took her first leave of absence, I guess quit her job, we knew we were going to make a gamble of this, but it was a gradual thing. So for example, when after Christine took off and she could answer the phone and take orders and do things during the day, and that was great. We had a presence. It wasn't, you call the number and nobody answers. That wasn't real good. But we also knew that it was a long way from being sustainable. So when I quit my job, she went back and worked at Nike to pay the mortgage, so because Nike's real close right here. So it took years to get, and I guess at some point when we hired our first person, we had to say, well, this is real, I guess.
Our big spurt came when we started working with Texas Instruments. And they designed a calculator-based laboratory, they called it CBL, that used our sensors. And so when that happened, we had to hire a couple teachers to help us write labs and help support teachers and when they use that sort of thing. So that was we're going gradually and then a little bump and then gradually.
Because that was a time when computers were so expensive, most schools could not afford them. In the late 90s and early 2000s, computers cost a fortune. Of course, the very, very rich schools could, but most schools, the science teacher was lucky to have one computer. You can't do labs with, but their TI calculators were popular then, they still are. And TI cleverly came out with this thing called CBL, which calculator-based laboratory, which you could plug sensors into it, connect it to a calculator. Well, the kids are buying the calculator, that saves the school money, and you could have yourself a data collection set up with relatively cheaply. So, and TI was a great partner for us, and they said, we could start over and invent all those probes and make our own. But we also could work with these Vernier people, and that would be certainly a win for us, but a win for TI and a win for teachers, because teachers didn't have to throw away or, start all over with new sensors. They could use the ones they maybe had a few for use with Apple too. So it was a great win for all three of us, I think, all three groups.
You brought up teachers, and I wanted to go there with teachers. Because you were innovative, you came up with all this instrumentation. Now tell me about how you all get teachers from point A to point B with your equipment.
Well, I'd say that we've appreciated from day one that teachers are busy and they need easy to use stuff. They don't need the world's greatest data collection, graphing analysis program. They need something that's relatively easy to use and they can get going. That's number one. And the other thing, we take tremendous pride in our tech support. And I think to this day, if you call, you don't get put on hold very often at all, and you often get to talk to a teacher, former teacher who did the same lab that you're trying to do a few years ago, or you might get me. We really do take great pride in our tech support because we know that lab's about to start and you can't get the darn thing to work. That's just a disaster.
The other thing we've done is written a lot of lab books to get teachers started. Mm-hmm. And we sell those $48 or something a copy for the whole school. So you buy one copy, and there's also the labs are on Microsoft Word in the back of the book on a CD, well, actually electronic now, but anyway, teachers can edit them and use them in any way they want. So we really try to give them something to start with. And then we also provide free training. I mean, if the teacher calls us, we'll, first of all, talk to them as long as they want, but also if they sign up, they could get an hour of virtual training from us, or longer if need be. If it's longer, it sometimes costs a bit, but we do webinars oftentimes during the month on different subjects. So we really try. The worst thing is if we go into a school and we see our equipment sitting unused on a shelf. It makes us crazy. So we really do try to help teachers get started with the equipment, and the kids, they have no problem with it when they start using it.
So, Dave and Christine, you all have been you've been at this for a very, very long time. So, what, in your opinion, what do you think are some of the obstacles that are faced by students who are from under-resourced communities, and what prevents them from being more interested in STEM learning and careers? And how do you think that you all can be part of the solution?
So I think we all have to be part of the solution. So to me, it's lack of role models. There are not enough teachers of color in our schools. And so I think we all have to do whatever we can, like Dr. Mackie does, to reach out to teachers and help them kind of bring underserved kids into the fold and get them interested in science. And certainly we think our products do that sort of thing, but students need help to get there. I have to give NSTA, National Science Teachers Association, a lot of credit, because they are really trying to present programs that are useful to teachers to help them help underserved kids. And one of the programs they had a mini series on I think it was called Equity and Diversity in the Classroom through Science and STEM. And it was a program that we sponsored, and it's still available on their website, to just help teachers get a leg up on helping students. Education is so important for these kids, and it's the only way that the best way that they can get ahead. And not related to our company, David and I pay for scholarships for underserved students at Portland State University and Oregon State University. And we just think that we have got to help kids get ahead in STEM with education.
Yeah, I think the role model problem is a huge one, and especially it would be wonderful if we can get more teachers of color. We've done pretty well getting women teachers in science, mostly in the biological side, medical side, but more teachers of color, it's going to take time, but I think hopefully we can get that going and improve things. But it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. I think there's some programs that are doing a great effort. There's a local science, it's really a nature thing here in Oregon, where they film scientists studying nature, and they really make a great effort at getting people of color and women as the young scientists doing exciting work. And that kind of thing is worth a lot, because if you might get a little girl that says, wow, you can be a scientist. You don't have to be an old white guy with a coat on. So
I'm happy to hear you all say what you're saying, because there's one thing to talk about the technical capital, and what you all have done over the last 40 years is made sure with fidelity that the technical capital existed for teachers, but then there's the human capital side that we must address. And I tell a story about when I was 9 years old. My uncle bought me an erector set, and I built a little car, and the car ran across the floor. And my uncle, who didn't finish 8th grade, he jumped up and he said, that boy is going to be an engineer. I had never met one. I didn't know how to spell it. I didn't know what one looked like. But my uncle said that I was going to be an engineer.
Yeah,
And
when
I went to school and I told that teacher I was going to be an engineer, she believed me. She looked like me and she said, Calvin, you can be whatever you want to be. So we got to have the human capital and the technical capital. And that's why I want to say thank you all for the technical capital, but also thank you for understanding that we have to marry that technical capital with the human capital to give the kid all of that experience to propel them forward.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say I totally agree, but it's also true that it's so unfair on the distribution of resources. We talk to schools that literally are throwing away 2-year-old computers to get new ones, and other schools that are using Apple IIs to this day. I mean, it's a very unfair world, and of course that's a lot associated with poverty and racial things, and so it's a difficult situation.
The inequities are absolutely real, and that's why what we're trying to do at STEM Global Action is to build out these affiliates and have these affiliates as anchors of knowledge for those type of schools who otherwise don't know how to get to Vernier or don't understand the technology that they need. We can be there for them as community experts to say, hey, we vetted this technology. We know it can help you. And more importantly, if you don't have the money, we'll go find the money and we'll be here to support you moving on. The inequities are absolutely real. My sons go to the science and math school, and what they have at that science and math school versus what they have at just the regular public schools is almost, I call it educational malpractice.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Ken.
No. Yes, and one thing I'd love for you all, if you could, for those of us who are not scientists, just try to explain to me, if I'm a biology teacher and just, a regular middle school, high school, what are the advantages of using your software in helping to bring science to my students? That's what I'm really trying to get at.
Okay, I would say there's a whole bunch of them. Number one is it's way more fun because remember in the old days, I literally taught kids this way. You tell that you're studying the cooling of water, and you literally tell them, take a thermometer, put it in the beaker, and every 5 minutes, read the thermometer and write down the temperature, then plot it on a piece of paper. And talk about a boring lab. They don't get much more boring than that. But we used to do that. And of course, the kids are either just goofing off or arguing, but nowadays you can just say, start that data collection and let it go and work on something else. And, in a half hour, check and see how it's going. The other point that's important to make is that's the way real scientists do things. So you've got you've got the advantages of it's much more efficient. You get better results because you didn't write the number down wrong, and you know how to make a graph. And so the tedium's taken out of the process. You get to use technology, which lots of kids like, and you're acting like a real scientist. And the neat thing is, since it's not a huge hassle to redo it, since it's pretty easy, if you made a mistake or if you want to try it under different conditions, it's easy to do that. And so you can repeat like a real scientist would do. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And so there's just a whole lot of advantages.
Especially in this day where data is king, right? Everything, data is being collected everywhere. And you all were on the front end of this whole data piece. And you all was developing sensors to collect data, but now sensors are in everything that we use to get the information that we need. I mean, the entire industries now, big data, data scientists, I met a young lady the other night, she's a data engineer. So your equipment allows our kids to foresee themselves, in the future in terms of big data.
So along those lines, do you all see any future trends for STEM learning for kids in under-resourced communities? What do you see is coming down the pike? What's the good news, you all think?
Well, there's some good programs, and there in some cases there's a lot of money. We've been involved with programs like Gear Up in Texas, and you hear of occasional programs. I do think there's a general sense in the whole, well, at least intelligent people in this world realize the world's got to change. We've got to move toward more equity in teaching positions and get more women and people of color going in science. So hopefully that's going to provide some momentum over time, but it will take some time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole Black Lives Matter has made all of us realize that, it sort of takes a village. We all need to do what we can do to make lives better for underrepresented students. And we're like in our newsletter, we're publishing articles, thought articles for Black History Month and for Native American Heritage Month, that sort of thing, to highlight scientists who are doing, scientists of color who are doing things in STEM. And hopefully those are passed on to students and this whole role model thing, we just really need to let students see what's happening.
Very good.
Now, before we go, I want you all, if there's a teacher listening and has never heard of Vernier, what would you tell that teacher? Where should they go tomorrow? What they should be doing to learn more about Vernier and how they could bring your solutions into their sphere?
Well, they can go to our website, www.vernier.com, and just sign up to get our newsletters and our various information from us, or go to one of our videos and just see the kinds of stuff that we do, or talk to your neighborhood teacher, because we are in most high schools and many middle schools and elementary and colleges in the country. We have a really good reputation, and teachers like to talk to teachers, and so we want them to say good things about us. And I think,
or give us a call.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a call.
You might talk to him.
Right, Dave may answer. I heard Dave may answer the phone.
I have to ask one thing. I believe I heard you say that you used our products as a student. Did you say that really, Dr. Mackie?
Yes, I believe I was a college student.
Okay.
At Morehouse.
I was afraid it was earlier. But even so, that's a little scary.
Hey. But you said something. You also, Dave saw a need for students and he put forth a solution. I wish my wife was here, because my wife and I saw a need for our two sons that wasn't being met in school, and we began doing hands-on things in our garage. And it's turned into a movement where we're pulling in teachers and students across the country. And for our listening audience, if we're in your area, if you come to one of our STEM Fest, you'll definitely see Vernier force in motion sensors where the cars bump, and we can show you how cars, the reaction when they collect. You can find the heat sensors, you find soil and temperature sensors. So what we try to do now is to do for the rest of the community what we did for our two little middle-class sons who had a dad with a PhD in engineering. Mm-hmm. And I thank you all for your effort in just bringing equity to classrooms and to kids, so they can have the technology and get the training that they need to understand the way of thinking, so that they can go on and partake in these amazing careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the 21st century. So I definitely want to say thank you to you all. Thank you for agreeing to being on my podcast. I feel like, I feel special, and keep doing what you're doing. Gary has promised me a trip out to Portland.
We'd love to have you here.
We love having teachers come here anytime. We have a slide, so we can write our slide. And thank you for doing what you do, Dr. Mackie. That's huge.
Thank you.
So before we go, Christine and Dave, I just have to ask you, it seems like you have to have excitement in your life to keep going. So tell us, are you excited for the future of young people in STEM?
I certainly am. I wouldn't be coming to work. I'm not young anymore. I wouldn't be coming to work every day if I didn't feel that we were making a difference in kids' lives. And I just love coming here. I love talking to teachers and hearing their stories. We love having kids come here. We often have school groups, pre-COVID, having school groups come here, ride the slide, and we don't have kids ourselves, so those other kids are our children.
Great. Thank you all so much. Dr. Mackie, any closing thoughts?
And I'll never forget, I told my mom, she said, "What you want to do?" I said, "I want to teach." She said, "Well, teach the world a better way." Christine and Dave, you all have taught the world a better way. Thank you. And your children are all the children across this world now and globe that use your product. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Dave and Christine, thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Mackie, thank you for being who you are and what you do. And most of all, we want to thank you all for listening on this latest episode of Let's Talk STEM. Please come back and follow us on all of our social channels. I'm Ken Sane. We'll see you next time on Let's Talk STEM.
You've been listening to a STEM Global Action podcast. Visit us at www.stemglobalaction.com. Until next time, let's keep talking STEM.